I have with me in studio DINESH SOUZA, author and documentary filmmaker. And I have to tell you, you got to see his brand new film, The Death of a Nation. And I saw it. Amazing. Really, really, really amazing. I'm glad that you're here. Thanks for coming in.
Great to be on the show.
And so, congratulations, by the way, on The Death of a Nation. And here's the book. There's a book on it as well, folks. You got to get it, all right? Really, really good book. You know, I interviewed you on The Fallen State, my TV show, thefallenstate.tv, and I said that this movie should be taught in every school, church, home. It was a real history lesson for me. I noticed that it's a little play on words. The Death of a Nation title is a play off the Birth of a Nation, the KKK movie. Tell us about that.
Well, Woodrow Wilson showed that movie, Birth of a Nation, in the White House. It was the first movie ever shown in the White House, and if you can believe it, the hero of the movie is the Ku Klux Klan.
Yeah.
And the reason it was called Birth of a Nation is that from the Democrats' point of view and the progressives' point of view, America was having a thrilling start all over again with the birth of a nation. In other words, we're leaving the nation of the founding behind, and we're creating this new progressive racist society.
Yeah.
So part of the theme of our movie is that this progressive democratic scheme has now played itself out. And if we let it keep going indefinitely, it will kill America. So that's the death of the nation. Our job is to prevent the death of a nation. And we use the example of Lincoln, but also the history of the Republican Party in being able to produce emancipation from the Democratic plantation.
It's a very, very informative, enlightening movie. You know, I was thinking of you, and I've known you now for a long time. You came here as an immigrant and went to liberal school, Dartmouth College, right? You became a Reagan Republican. For someone who is an immigrant, you migrated here. How did you become so Americanized? What is it that caused you to love the country probably more than a person that's born here?
Well, first of all, I think if you're born in America, you tend to take America for granted. It's the only country you know.
Yeah.
And so it's difficult for you to judge it because you have nothing to compare it to. Now, when people are born in other countries, they have some basis of comparison. And when I came to America, I realized that not only is this the land of opportunity in the sense of being able to achieve success, but it's the place where you can be the architect of your own destiny.
That's right.
That if you have, as I did, a peculiar set of interests and wanted to develop a career as a writer, now a filmmaker, that's something I can do in America, whereas it would have been very difficult to do anywhere else in the world. And so I kind of fell in love with America, the America of the founding, and also the America as she is now.
Right.
And I also began to realize that there's a political divide in this country. I believe in ladders of opportunity, a system in which a guy who starts out with nothing can climb up the ladder and better his life.
Yes.
That's what Lincoln talked about. The other party, the Democrats, they believe in, I would call it the politics of the rope. It's kind of like they're on top of a building. They let the rope down. Hey, immigrant, grab onto this rope. We'll pull you up. But if you're smart, you realize, wait a minute, I'm always going to be beholden to you.
Yeah. And
frankly, if you let go, down I go. So I prefer the politics of the ladder to the politics of the rope.
You know, I want to go back to the birth of a nation. The Democrats are always pretending to care about racism and all this stuff, so-called racism, but they don't seem to mind that the movie The Birth of a Nation, the KKK movie, was played in the White House. I don't hear any complaints about that. It seems as though when they do crazy things, it's no big deal.
Well, these crazy things, as you call it, I mean, most of the horrible acts of bigotry in this country, not just against blacks, but against Japanese Americans and Orientals and against Latinos, have been done by Democrats.
Yes.
So this is a weird situation. They did it. And now they're pretending to be the cure for it. It's almost like the guy who poisoned the water is now pretending to be the water commissioner. Hey, what can I do to solve the problem? So the Democrats, they showed the movie. They praised the KKK. In fact, if I can cite the progressive historian Eric Foner, this is the guy at Columbia,
Yes.
He goes, quote, for decades, the Ku Klux Klan was the domestic terrorist arm of the Democratic Party, end
Yes.
quote.
You know, I was thinking of Larry, was it Larry Bird?
You mean the basketball player?
No, the KKK guy that was a congressman.
Oh, Robert Byrd.
Robert Byrd. You know, Hillary Clinton. I saw a photo of Hillary Clinton kissing the guy. And he recruited for the KKK. He was like really a part of that organization, and they accepted him with a smile.
Absolutely. Well, and think about this. Most of the racist Dixiecrats stayed in the Democratic Party. This whole idea that the racist Dixiecrats became Republicans, big lie.
Yeah.
Most of them remained Democrats. Robert Byrd was one of the leading members. I mean, this is the guy who spoke for 16 hours to filibuster the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So it isn't just that he used to be in the Klan before. This is as a mature adult. He's blocking the landmark Civil Rights Bill of the 60s, right? Anyway, when he died, Obama and Bill Clinton went to his funeral, and Bill Clinton even said, some people will say he's in the Ku Klux Klan, but let me tell you what that means. And guess what it means? He goes, you had to be in the Klan in those days to advance in the Democratic Party, which is true. And what a telling statement that is.
Oh, it's so amazing. You know, one thing that you show in the movie that is so profound to me is the deception of the progressive, the liberal media, Democrats and others, how they've literally brainwashed the people about the Democratic Party, and they have been successful in convincing them that the Republican or the people on the right are their enemies.
Yeah, and it's not even brainwashing in the traditional sense because, frankly, if somebody were to take you in a room and give you Chinese water torture and so on, you'd know you're being brainwashed, right? Because you'd realize you're being subjected to this harsh... But what the Democrats do is they dominate the textbooks. And so they don't assign books that counter their ideology.
Yes.
They spin the narrative their way. Typically what will happen is a professor will write a book, and he'll say something like, Nazism is a phenomenon of the right. Completely false. Hitler didn't think so. Hitler called himself a National Socialist. But they'll say this. And then other professors will say, his friends will go, great book, wonderful book, breakthrough book. Then NPR will come interview the guy. It'll be a favorable review in the New York Review of Books. Michael Moore will roll into town, make a documentary movie, or Steven Spielberg will make a feature film. And so here's what I'm getting at. The ordinary guy thinks, oh, wow, Nazism must be on the right because, hey, I saw it in Barnes & Noble, and then I thought I heard it on the History Channel, and I saw something on NPR, and then I think I saw a movie about it. So because even though it's the same bullet that's ricocheting from one wall to the other, you feel like, wow, I've heard this in so many different places. It's got to be true.
Why is it that the Democrats, the liberal, the progressive, whatever you want to call them, are able to put their message out, but the Christians, the conservative Republicans are not able to counteract that with the truth?
I think the reason is that the Republicans and the right-wingers tend to go into business and the military, and the left-wingers tend to go into academia and the media, legal field and journalism and entertainment. And so they dominate those fields. And unfortunately, that creates a kind of a one-sidedness in the way the narrative is told. And then conservatives are on the receiving end of this attack.
Is that going to ever change?
It's going to change when conservatives wake up and realize that these megaphones are really important, that we actually have to make our own movies, and we actually need to have our own media outlets, and we need to be able to get information out, not just to small pockets of people, but to the mainstream of the American public. We also have to make sure that the universities aren't the closed islands of repression that they've unfortunately become. So there's a big task ahead.
That's one thing I love about what you do. You don't sit around and wait for the liberal media, liberal movies and things to present you. You get out there, you create the truth. You put out your own films, you write your books, and you compare, and you show that. And we do need more of that on the right.
For sure. I mean, think of how unnatural the situation is. Here we are in an election year, midterm election year. We're releasing a movie in 1,000 theaters, right? Now, if this was a normal country, I'd be talking about it on The View, and I'd be on Good Morning America, and maybe CNN would have someone debate me on it. But the truth of it is all these outlets will pretend like there's no such movie. They'll pretend it doesn't even exist. And so this is the kind of repression we're up against in which essentially news is created or denied by exclusion. It's a shameful situation in a supposedly free country. So I'm trying to break this logjam and force the left to confront these ideas and also bring them out to a whole bunch of well-meaning middle-of-the-road guys who aren't that political, but who would like to know the truth.
When did you know that you were going to get into making movies?
There was a guy who was a fan of mine who liked my books, and he said, look, I'd like to get your books to more people. And I said to him, look, I can get them to a few more people, but the truth of it is there's only so many people in America who buy a hardcover book.
Right.
This is the intellectual subculture of America, and it's pretty big, but it's probably 1 million people. Now, if you want 10 million people to be exposed to my work, a book won't do that. You're going to need to make a movie.
Yeah.
And I remember that Michael Moore had made Fahrenheit 9/11 and dropped it in the middle of the 2004 campaign. And so I told him, I said, the way to do this is to make a movie. And so he gave me some initial seed capital, and he told me, listen, go find a bunch of other guys to also put up some money, and then maybe you can make a movie with some of your ideas and put it out there.
There were so many things in the death of a nation, plantation politics, and the making of the Democratic Party that it just opened my eyes to so many things. One was George Soros. I had no idea that he got started in the way that he did. Briefly tell us about that without telling the whole thing.
Yeah, so George Soros, if you listen to him today, he has an institute which is called the Open Society. He says he's a champion of freedom, but he's on the left.
Yeah.
And interestingly, even though he fashions himself to be anti-fascist, when he was a teenager, George Soros, he lived in Hungary, his native country. Hungary was occupied by the Germans, and they had a fascist regime in Hungary. And George Soros and another guy would go around confiscating the property of Jews. Now, Soros was too young to do it himself, but he was making records of it, and he was participating in it.
Yeah.
So he was interviewed by Steve Kroft of CBS News, 60 Minutes, a few years ago. And Kroft asked Soros, he goes, do you feel bad about what you did? And Soros goes, absolutely not. He goes, well, why not? And Soros goes, well, because it's kind of like markets. You have to seize your opportunities and take them where you see them. I mean, the sheer immorality of this man, in which he looks at the confiscation of Jewish property as a, quote, market opportunity. And by the way, he's not doing this as a teenager. Now he's reflecting as a mature man.
Yes.
So we blow the whistle on him big time in this movie.
Are the Jewish leaders aware of that about him? And if so, do they accept that?
I think this is a big open question because I think that with Soros, he's done a lot. He's a massive philanthropist. He's one of the richest men in the world. And he gives money left and right to various organizations. So he's actually not a man that organizations like to speak out against. Why? Because he's a source of funding these organizations. So it's going to be a very interesting question to see after this movie, with all these truths out on the table, what the attitude towards George Soros is going to be on the part of the Jewish leadership.
When I saw that, I wonder, will he lose his Jewish card now, his membership? Because that was profound to see that. Really, really profound.
Well, it shows you, it's a metaphor, I think, for the way in which fascist tactics are used by the left today. And almost Nazi tactics, right? If you look at these guys, Antifa, they wear black outfits, they wear costumes, they carry truncheons, they drive speakers off campus, they beat people up. Well, that's what Mussolini's brown shirts did. And Mussolini's brown shirts looked like that. They wore black outfits, they carried truncheons, they beat people up, they drove people off the university campus. So there's a kind of identity between these organizations. The main difference is that the Antifa think that they're being anti-fascist when they're acting exactly like the fascists.
We run out of time. You made 2016 Obama's America a very, very mamma mia, eye-opening movie. Right after that, he put you in jail. Were you surprised?
Well, I was, but I shouldn't have been because Obama's a very vindictive guy.
Yes.
And this is a movie that really got him, in a sense, in his gut. And so he unleashed Eric Holder and his sort of dogs, if you will, on me. In New York, a guy named Preet Bharara. So, yeah, I did my time. Happily, I was pardoned by President Trump. So what Obama did, Trump has undone. And so I feel great to be a free man. I get my rights back, and I feel like I've got my American dream back.
Are you happy for that experience now that it's behind you? Are you happy you went through that?
Yes, in the sense that it was, it widened my horizons. It showed me an America I would not have seen before. I think it's made me a more reflective and effective person in what I do.
Yeah.
And so as I look back on it, I will see it as part of my providential, you may say, learning experience.
Tell the folks why they need to see The Death of a Nation. And when is it coming out, where, and all the good stuff?
Death of a Nation, the book, will be out July 31st. Death of a Nation, the movie, opens in 1,000 theaters on Friday, August 3rd. It's an eye-opening movie. But it's an entertaining movie. It's
Yes.
inspiring. You leave it feeling great, feeling empowered. You also become what I call a very dangerous American because you now know things that you didn't know before.
That's for sure.
That allow you to counter the stuff that people throw at you. So I think it's a movie that is both inspiring, moving, informative, and entertaining, and that's a lot. That's a lot to ask for a movie.
You know, I have to honestly tell you, and I don't say these things just to be saying them. When I was watching the movie, I could not stop watching it. It was interesting from the beginning to the very end. I even listened to the music and everything else. And it was profound. I want everybody and their mama to see it. I really, really appreciate you making this movie. It was like a history lesson for me. It was a wake-up call.
It's history in the past, but that illuminates the present.
Yes.
And that's what I tried to do, and I'm delighted it had its effect.
God bless you, man, and thank you for what you're doing.
I appreciate it.
All right.